Creatine is one of the most science-backed supplements in the world, reported to increase muscle, strength, and improve recovery. So what happens if you stop taking it? Well, I stopped taking creatine to find out, and to document my results, I tracked my body fat, my weight, and I even measured every body part. Well, almost every body part. So let's find out if creatine really is a super supplement or just another scam. So how does creatine work? Creatine is actually produced in our body naturally through the conversion of amino acids in our liver and kidneys, which is then stored in our muscles. Supplementing with creatine can boost the amount of creatine that is stored in our muscles, which can give us more energy during high intensity exercise. This can enable us to lift a little heavier, get a few extra reps, and over time this can lead to greater muscle growth and improved performance. Now, I've been taking creatine for as long as I can remember, and even though it's pretty cheap and scientifically backed, I'm still not really sure if it actually does anything. It is reported that 20% of people are non-responders to creatine, meaning they won't receive any benefits from taking it, and I thought this was me. However, earlier this year I had my DNA analysed and it turns out...
I remember because you mentioned that in your video.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if I noticed any difference or not, but I should then, I guess.
You should, yeah.
But how much creatine do we actually need? Now, most of the calculators I found online say that I need to take 5 grams of creatine a day. However, they do also conveniently sell creatine. I then found a study about creatine dosages published in 1996, which stated the effective maintenance formula was 0.03 grams of creatine per kilo of body weight. So I weigh 77 kilograms, so 77 times 0.3 equals 2.31 grams of creatine. Now, the reason I was interested in getting a more accurate number was because I wanted to see if it is possible to get enough creatine from your diet alone. And the main sources for creatine are fish and red meat, with herring being number 1, with 100 grams giving you 1.1 grams of creatine, closely followed by beef and salmon. But most other meats also contain a fair amount of creatine. So for example, for me to hit my creatine requirements through food alone, I'd need to eat roughly 100 grams of salmon and 300 grams of chicken, which is doable, but I do think it would be hard to do on a consistent basis, which is why I think supplementing with creatine does make sense. So let's get to the results. So over the 60 days, did I notice any difference in my training or strength? And to be totally honest, no. My strength has continued to increase in the gym, and I don't feel like my energy levels have changed either. So on day 1, I weighed in at 170.8 pounds and my body fat percentage was 20.4. And this morning I weighed in at 170.8 pounds and my body fat percentage was 20.2%. My measurements were also exactly the same. So essentially, I stayed the same. So it's been a few days since I made the video and I've actually found something out that explains everything, and I think it's going to blow your mind because it blew mine. Remember earlier when I mentioned that our body naturally produces creatine? Well, I forgot to take into account that during this process that our body naturally produces about 1 gram of creatine per day naturally, which means that I only actually have to get about 1.23 grams of creatine from my diet. For example, this is only 50 grams of salmon and 200 grams of chicken, and this is enough for me to hit my creatine requirement, which is why I don't notice a difference when I take creatine, as I'm already getting enough from my diet and my body's natural creatine making process. So is creatine a scam? I think the research has shown that it actually does work. However, I think the marketing behind it is a scam. And if you're someone who eats meat and fish on a regular basis, you're probably getting enough from your diet alone, and this is nothing more than an expensive cordial.